they did jump into humans pretty quick, but we're talking about, I mean, we might as well be talking about, like, running grape Shasta through, like, 10 years of safety versus the orange Shasta that's already out there.
This is a lesson. Like, if we did this now, why can't we just keep doing this all the time?
You know, people say, why didn't we act like this with SARS or, you know, anything else? And it's like, well, it's different.
I'm gonna blame public education for this. That people are not taught critical thinking.
Imagine the top of this beer can is a cell.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, all these bits are the mitochondria and stuff, and all this stuff around here is you know, like the gooey ectoplasm. You know, it's not actually ectoplasm.
Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and why don't you like and share and subscribe to the channel, and, well, subscribe to the channel, share this video, and like it. That's what cool cats do, and there's a cool cat over there, but you probably can't see him. You'll see him in a minute.
And I'm Floyd the cat. We would love it if you would hang out to the end to listen to the music that these two buddies write.
He looks incensed. He's staring at you like, I'm judging you.
And I'm Floyd's sidekick, Casey Rochford. And, you know, we also have music on Spotify and iTunes. And due to the coronavirus, we are experiencing lags in thinking of the next thing to say.
Wait a minute. Are we 6 feet apart? I don't have my tape measure.
Technically, probably not, but our faces are at least, like, pointing...
Yeah, we're kind of going that way,
yeah, I mean,
like, you know...
we do hang out often enough that we probably share some antibodies. But, I mean, like, honestly, the thing is, like, with a novel virus... Even the people you live with, you're not actually, like, you don't really share immunity for that thing, right?
No,
because it doesn't already exist. So
makes sense.
So the only reason they say, you know, it's okay to be around people in your home is because what choice do you have?
That's a good point. Yeah. So, what do you think we should talk about today? I mean, this seems kind of like a good topic. I mean, it's kind of timely, and I'm sure it's going to be sticking around for a while. So
yeah, I mean, as far as immunity goes, we've got vaccines coming out. Mm-hmm. You know, they're
not just like who's we, like planet Earth, because if you look at Earth, there's like hundreds of them. Like every country is working on different vaccines.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah,
well, I mean, the U.S. I think we have at least 3 that I know of.
There's
Russia has like 12 or something.
2 approved, and like another 1 or 2 that are in the works that are almost there. Yeah, and some of these might be in other countries as well, like developed here and vice versa.
This thing, like, I just want to preface this with, it pisses me off that people don't share information when something's important. Like everybody's closely guarded secret. Like, you know, this is kind of a big deal. And, you know, even if you don't think it's a big deal, it's something we should think about for something that really is a big deal, like a zombie apocalypse, right? Like when the zombies start coming.
I mean, some things are shared, like the genome of this particular virus, for instance. You know, we share that sequence with everyone so that they can work on this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not an immunologist, but at a cursory glance, I don't really see that much difference from one vaccine to the other. I don't know how they're patenting these as different things. Like maybe it's the vehicle they use to deliver it, whatever.
But we could totally go on. Don't get me started on patents.
Oh yeah.
Holy shit. Like especially when it's something important.
Mm-hmm. But there's so much controversy around these particular vaccines.
Yeah.
These. I mean, like, we're talking COVID-19 stuff. So,
Yeah.
like, let's just call it this vaccine.
Sure.
For ease.
For the sake of, discussion. Yeah. Not having
even though there's several. Like, people are generally extra scared of this one. Like, even if they're not anti-vaxxers. There's a lot of people that are like, hey, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Vaccines are great. I'm just scared of this one because it came out so fast.
Well, I mean, there's some merit to that. And I think a lot of people put a lot of faith in the FDA and such organizations that regulate vaccines and other drugs, and think that, well, we kind of fast-tracked this. Like, well, we skipped all of the safety measures and all the steps to ensure this to be a safe substance, right?
But we didn't. And that's the thing. Like, there have been trials going on for several months, and people have been participating in them, and people have been asked publicly to participate in them. So you had visibility to see that there was efficacy and safety trials going on. Mm-hmm. And, they did jump into humans pretty quick, but we're talking about, I mean, we might as well be talking about, like, running grape Shasta through, like, 10 years of safety versus the orange Shasta that's already out there. It's like, it's a different flavor of the same basic thing that we already know is safe.
But why not moon mist Shasta? Just saying.
That needs to come back.
It totally does. Yeah, I mean, I think I would say, just as a person looking at this kind of thing from afar, all the regulatory things were kind of diminished, like the ridiculous regulatory things, for the sake of getting this out fast, but not necessarily the safety. Like, there's
most of the red tape that takes years and years and years is all around patents and money and who owns what and how similar is this to that.
And bureaucracy, right?
Yeah.
Like all kinds of paperwork and stuff. And my thought is, okay, well, this is a lesson. Like, if we did this now, why can't we just keep doing this all the time?
Well, I mean, in a way we do. With the flu vaccine, that changes every year. Mm-mm. And now, granted, they take 2 years to work on it. Like, they're modeling it 2 years ahead or so. I might be wrong on that number, but it's more than a year, but less than 10. But so people are wondering, like, why can we fast track some things and not others? And why is this the fastest one? Like, probably the last time we saw this happen was the AIDS epidemic in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And they fast tracked treatments for that. Which were quote-unquote treatments, right? Like, they weren't that great. They were pretty brutal. They were not even effective.
Yeah, and there's issues with, like, regulatory sides of things.
And the difference there is they were trying to treat, right? Mm-hmm. That's akin to, like, the remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine and stuff. Those are meant to treat and help you get over it quicker.
This is a vaccine.
Yeah, this is a vaccine. Mm-hmm. And this is something you can get over. AIDS is like, you got it for life, basically.
Yeah.
Well, now we're kind of coming up with ways to reduce the viral load to almost zero, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, in the near future.
That took
AIDS
30 plus years.
AIDS is going to be a thing of the past. But yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I guess, like, just talking about, like, the resistance to it, I do understand people's apprehension, I guess, in light of the speed at which this was created, because you've got that whole you can have it fast, you can have it done fast, done well, or done cheap, but not all of the above, essentially.
Yeah.
I think there's I should probably have more beer, because I don't remember the saying, but that's kind of the thing. Now, the thing to keep in mind is, like you'd mentioned, this is kind of a global effort. While not all information is shared equally across the planet, there is information sharing. So it's not like some kind of passive vaccine drug thing that's being developed. This is it's different, and you can't compare something over there to this. Like, this is novel. Like, the virus and the solution to the virus is novel.
Yeah. Yeah, and the way the virus has affected humanity is novel in itself. Like, people say, why didn't we act like this with SARS or, anything else? And it's like, well, it's different. It's more contagious. It's harder to get rid of. It's got a longer incubation period. You can be asymptomatically spread. There's all kinds of complications that make this thing so virulent. And I understand that that's hard to grasp if you don't really have that biology understanding, right?
Yeah.
But the intense vitriol for science that I've been seeing lately is just, it's almost offensive to sensibility.
Well, and I'm gonna blame public education for this. That people are not taught critical thinking. They're not taught how to be a skeptic.
Right.
How to understand things and research things and stuff like that, and try to discover the truth. It's all about feelings. And the news doesn't help. All the news, mainstream media and all that stuff, they hype everything up. They get everybody whipped up and fearful and whatnot and confused, and we're left with like a mess. Nobody knows anything, and they have a bunch of like jumbled up data that doesn't mean a thing. And that's a problem. Like, it's very simple when you look at it. It's something you can understand. The average person can understand it. Okay, yeah, maybe you won't know like the finer details and all that, but you can at least comprehend if your IQ is above 80.
Okay.
Well, I don't know what's going on there. Wait. Yeah, COVID? Oh, man.
COVID sniffing cat.
Mm-hmm.
So, when a person says, I'm definitely not going to take it, I feel really sad. And if a person says, I'm going to wait and see what happens, I'm a little more okay with that, because they're not saying no. They're showing a little bit of healthy skepticism.
Caution.
And it's like, I don't know how long you plan on waiting, because, if you're going to wait like 2 weeks, we've already been safety testing for several months. So, what's your benchmark, I'm guessing?
And that's the thing. It's like, how do you know, like, what's the threshold?
Right, yeah.
And I kind of fall into the latter camp. Like, I'm not one to jump on the bandwagon at the very newest technology and be like, yeah, I'm going to, just go ahead with that. I'm always cautious of things.
It's
especially
not new technology, though. It's actually very old technology.
Well, that's true. No, something that has been recently developed. Not the concept, but the product. But then again, like, things like any other vaccine, it's been tested through time, and it's pretty much safe.
Yeah.
Now, at least.
This one is done in a different way, though.
Yeah.
From previous vaccines. And when I say different, it's, like I said, not a new technology. So this is something that we've already, spent plenty of time studying, researching, implementing in different ways.
Well, vaccines in general, right?
Yeah, well, what I'm talking about is mRNA. We're using mRNA instead of an attenuated or inactivated form of the actual whole virus.
Okay.
We're just taking a little chunk of the virus that tells your body to basically produce the spike proteins that is, unique to this novel coronavirus. None of the rest of the virus gets made. So this is way safer and more effective because, imagine the top of this beer can is a cell. And, all these bits are the mitochondria and stuff, and all this stuff around here is like the gooey ectoplasm. It's not actually ectoplasm. But
ecto cooler, man.
But
I wish I had
this
some.
little itty bitty thing in the middle, right? That's the nucleus of the cell where your DNA is, right? So mRNA can get into all this gooey shit, and it can make your cells produce T cells and B cells and all that stuff that a regular vaccine and even the virus itself will not produce. So a virus gets in, you produce antibodies, that's it. If you can produce antibodies and T cells and B cells and all that stuff, you have basically just armored yourself up, like to the hilt, right? And it's still, the mRNA is still too big to get into the nucleus. So all these conspiracy theories about it altering human DNA is actually physically impossible.
So, what is it? Sorry, Red Dwarf.
I've never seen one. No one has, but it's an mRNA vaccine.
Hang on, let me put my hat on, and then again, it's so it's kind of like you're taking the signature of that particular virus and using that as a catalyst to create, to trigger your body's natural immune response against it. So it recognizes it basically. I could look at your face, and I could actually look at just your eye and be like, oh, that's Casey.
Yeah.
I don't have to see all of you, but I could just look at your eye and be like, I know you.
Yeah.
And so something akin to that, right?
Yeah, basically, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a cogent paradigm.
I'd rather have a good example. More Red Dwarf.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, there's so many conspiracy theories that surround this one, and that one is probably the second most ridiculous. The whole altering human DNA thing. But
where does that even come from? This is the thing.
Then there's the 5G crap.
No, the 5G. 5G is the cause of COVID.
No, this one. Now they're saying that the aluminum. We don't even know if there's aluminum in all or any of these yet. But they're trying to say the aluminum acts as an antenna for 5G to control you or some crap.
Wait, aluminum in what? Hang on, wait, what? Oh, you gotta rewind here. I haven't heard this one.
I didn't hear it until today either. But there's some doctor lady that's a doctor of something that's not even closely related to immunology.
Of course.
And she's saying that the aluminum adjuvants, which you remember the anti-vaxxer that we interviewed was going on and on about, and I was like, dude, they're in such small quantities, and you've already got more aluminum than that naturally occurring in your body.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. People say things like that about all kinds of things, like Alzheimer's and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, there's aluminum in your brain, and so you don't use aluminum pans. And what? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I'm all about being skeptical and cautious and things, but you take 2 minutes to think about this shit, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know a few things about some stuff.
I would say that's not even skepticism, that's just flat out paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's a fine line, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's really easy to cross that line, because the problem with skepticism is, like, you are unsure.
Yeah.
Like, you're admitting that you're not sure, and you're taking this position on the top of a fence, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to fall onto the wrong side. But
Well, just don't fall so far. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
yeah,
Sit on the fence. That's okay. Just lean to one side or the other. You know, you don't have to go whole hog, down that rabbit hole or this one or something. Like, it's fine to question things. In fact, that's actually science.
yeah,
Questioning stuff, even your own self, your own conclusions, analyze your own biases and things like that. That's good. But
well,
you start going down and, like, opening the blinds and thinking there's, like, agents, federal agents out to get you, like that. I don't know.
Well, speaking of skepticism / paranoia, there's a community of people that actually have a pretty good gripe about being skeptical of stuff like this, and that's the black community.
Mm-hmm.
Tuskegee and
Oh,
sterility and like all this crap that went on 50, 60 years ago, plus or minus a decade,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. If you don't know about Tuskegee, that experiment,
Yeah.
you should probably look it up. You will be horrified and angry. I mean, if you're, like, an empathetic human being, you
Right.
will be. And I think okay, so I don't blame people for harboring some resentment from that kind of situation, especially because there's a track record of the government taking a dump on all manner of people. Black people, Irish people, Chinese people, whatever, Japanese.
Yeah.
Remember World War II?
Literal internment camps.
Yeah. Like, and saying one thing and doing another, lying, like,
It's a boy cried wolf situation.
Yeah.
Like now they're actually depending on people to rally together and get this vaccine to help one another, and they've already alienated a huge chunk of the population by what they've done in the past.
Yeah,
and
I don't.
it's sins of the father, yeah, but like it is
Well,
what it is.
no, so yes, sins of the father applies to individuals, right? Like a person, but not a system that's perpetually in existence.
But that's
the
made up of
government,
people.
right? Well, it is,
That come
but
and go,
the structure is maintained over generations, regardless of who is there or here or whatever. And I think people in these communities are cautious and wary of the state, right? For good reason, because the state has fucking lied constantly and has done some awful things. Not just in the U.S. Like, I don't want to,
Sure.
limit
But these
this to
are
U.S.
privately developed vaccines
Yeah.
all over the world. So, like, we've discussed this before, that the machinations that would be involved in a global conspiracy to harm people with something as minuscule as a vaccine, like, that's just beyond a shadow of a doubt ridiculous.
It is. But you got to look at it from their perspective. Like,
Yeah.
Can you make a differentiation between the government, private organizations? I mean, especially since the U.S. is essentially
A corporation.
well, it's a corporatocracy. Yeah, like, I mean, especially in the big corporation sense, like the pharmaceutical industry, like, they're very intertwined. And how can you see beyond those blurred lines and know what's real and what's not, who's telling the truth and who's not? Like, if you're somebody that doesn't have a firm foundation of common sense and logic and a good education, like you're not going to be able to do that, especially when all of your people around you are telling you stuff, right? And telling you stories about how the government did this and did that. Like, I don't blame them. I don't blame people. I don't fault them for being very wary of that, because in the past, it's caused some harm.
So I want to share some insider knowledge, having worked in biotech and pharmaceuticals and whatnot. R&D occurs. So you got this upside down pyramid, right? Okay. These are big corporations most of the time, right? But way down in R&D, you've got like a handful of just not very well paid people, right?
Yeah.
Above all of that, you got all these people who are profit driven, yeah. But when it comes down to it, if they wanted to control your mind or kill you or whatever, it wouldn't be able to be implemented without the knowledge of those not so well paid scientists doing the research and development. Basically, they would have to be in on it. And they're not paid well enough to forego their ethical qualms about doing something like that. And you wouldn't be able to slip it in without them knowing. Because, I mean, let's face it, that sort of thing either doesn't exist, like mind control, or killing people. They would be like, hey, red flag, we can't put this into a human body, you know, like, it would be caught. Yeah. It would be caught by regular Joes, you know.
Well, you and I know that, but that's the thing, like, people in certain communities aren't aware of that, or see things differently.
Yeah.
And so how do you convince people that this particular case, though Tuskegee happened, and you know
that was government, though.
What,
like,
but
out and out government,
well,
right?
It was, but then a lot of people don't see a difference. So how do you convince people that this is a good thing?
Yeah, I mean,
despite the huge, like, seriously, if you ever look at the things that governments, big corporations throughout history have done, it is terrible. Like, I want to cry right now. Terrible it is. Some awful, awful stuff has happened. And so how do you convince people that this is an exception to the rule of lying, deceit, you know, like abuse and stuff like that, which is pretty much the rule throughout history?
I can tell you my best attempts, but so far they've failed. Like, I've tried to have this conversation with a number of people, even Ocean the Ghost, you know, a regular on the show.
Mm-hmm. Cool guy, by the way.
Yeah. You know, that skepticism is so deep-seated. Like, basically, even if you explain to them, hey, like, yeah, Tuskegee was shit, but it's like that was a targeted experiment, right?
Experiment,
like,
you know, that
this is something that's global, or you know, like, let's focus on the U.S. This is something that's going out. First of all, like, right off the bat, we're going to be giving this to first responders, people with comorbidities, you know, people that are actually, like, heavily at risk, right? If our goal was to screw over black people, and this would be a huge red flag, of course, wouldn't we be like, well, first we're going to give the vaccine to black people, you know?
I was actually thinking about that it's a vaccine would be, a mass-produced vaccine would be indiscriminate. Mm-hmm. So no one knows when they're manufacturing this particular vaccine.
Yeah.
They don't know that who's going to get it. And so how could there be some kind of nefarious, you know, tactic or something to get a certain subsect of the population?
Yeah. And as much as racists would like to not believe, there's, like, really no genetic difference between white people, black people, Asian people. So there's no real markers you can put in this, ubiquitous vaccine that only kills black people. Like that's not something that can really happen,
Yeah. That's a good point. It's just...
I mean, so that's one angle I've tried. I don't know. It's really difficult because, I mean, I understand it, right? I understand where the skepticism comes from.
I do too.
But it's at the same time, like I don't quite get why they're applying it so with such broad strokes, right? Like if there were somebody that was like, hey, we've got this magical cure for sickle cell, which mostly just affects black people.
Sickle cell anemia. Right?
Yeah. Then I would have a healthy dose of skepticism with that.
Yeah.
For sure. Right? Because that's tailored.
Yeah. That's specific.
That's like
to...
one of the few minor genetic differences that has to do with the shape of the blood cell in African Americans versus everyone else, right? So
wait a minute. Hey, there's black
Africans,
people in all over the world.
And Jamaicans and black England. Yeah. It's hard to think of the right word.
Just say black people, it's fine.
Yeah. So that would call for a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yeah.
This is something that while it does affect black people more, that has more to do with socioeconomic stuff, cultural differences, mask availability, social distancing issues, like all kinds of stuff that are just difficulties, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe they, because of the socioeconomic statuses, they can't afford to buy a mask. They have to live with roommates. They have to go to work as an essential worker. Whatever it is, they're at higher risk and they're getting hit a little bit harder by COVID.
Yeah.
That being the case, biologically speaking, the vaccine will be indiscriminate.
Yeah. That's my point. Yeah. But I think, empathy, right? Like, try to imagine yourself in somebody else's shoes. Look at it from their perspective. Historically, you can say, well, these are private organizations, and that's the government over there. But, from somebody in that position, how easy is it to make that distinction? The media, the government, big business and stuff, like, it all seems the same.
Yeah.
I mean, to me it does, honestly. So I kind of get where people are coming from. And a lot of those organizations or institutions have a history of deception for their own particular gain. And there's probably some cultural thing. Parents teaching kids, don't trust the cops,
right?
Because if you get pulled over, that cop's probably going to kill you, or whatever,
That's an evolutionary necessity, and you're right. You're onto something here. That's probably exactly what's happening here. Is that skepticism is built in on some level, like let's say socially, and on an evolution scale. Socially, it's something that they've evolved to carry with them, right? But I was just reminded of a recent minute microscopy you did about perception equaling, what was the other word? The P word? Too much beer.
Yeah, I know.
Perception equaling...
it was perspective equals perception.
Perception, right. Yeah. Like, the way that they view the world, like, through that lens, is shaping the way that they're interpreting what's happening right now. So,
and I mean...
But that doesn't always equal truth, right?
Well, or safety, right? Like, there are times where you should be cautious. And in fact, I'd say like 99% of the time, never trust authority. But that 1% of the time, the experts, the people who know things, there are times where you, like, what they're saying is actually true. Well, it's okay. Yeah, my factors are a little bit off there, but it depends on the situation. In this one, it's not 99 and 1%. It's different than that. But how are people to know the difference? When you've been lied to over and over and over again, and many of your people have been enslaved or killed or injected with syphilis or something like that, why would you trust those people ever again? Ever?
Yeah.
And so I get it, but the thing is, like, the problem there is that when they are right, it's like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
When the wolf is actually there, you're thinking it's not, because every other time it's been a hoax.
Yeah. And if the skepticism is strong enough, there is no proving it, right? Like, you could say, hey, I'm the president of the United States. I'm going to take the vaccine on television.
Yeah, live stream it.
And then you're going to say, well, how do I know that's what's in the syringe?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's it going to end?
That's a good point. Oh man, that is a tricky situation.
And I'll admit, with this administration, I would be skeptical asking that same question.
Me, it would be any administration, but I get it. I guess this is a lesson for people in leadership positions. Lead by being honest. Try that. Just be honest. If you make a mistake, be honest about it. If you don't know, be honest about it. Like, fucking be honest. It's not that hard.
Looking back on W, like, at least he was honest. The whole, like, that's news to me about the gas prices. It's like, well, okay, he's not trying to bullshit us.
No, he actually didn't know.
Maybe it's ivory tower stuff, but at least he's not trying to pretend he's like regular Joe Blow.
Fish could live together. Like, that's the thing I miss about GW is, like, all the Bushisms.
I know.
Oh man,
they had like a whole calendar of them, like
the Dan Quayle stuff too. Oh my god, there was some good stuff.
I've made good decisions in the past. I've made good decisions in the future.
And that's why I say government is the entertainment arm of a country. It's the most amusing thing ever.
Dan Quayle.
You don't take it too personally. But yeah, like, I don't know how you overcome, because the thing is, like, specifically talking about, like, black people in the U.S. And their history and experiences and stuff, like, they haven't exactly been treated well in the past. Granted, most people who are alive today know nothing of that, but it's been passed down. Like, there's word of mouth. Your grandma tells you something, your mom tells you something. Like, hey, your dad explains something to you. And that culture perpetuates throughout time, like, well beyond the point of incident. And I don't think you can overcome that.
Well, I would hope you can.
Well, you can by being honest. That's really what it comes down to. Like,
but
I mean,
like, when was so? I think the whole, covert sterilization thing, which if I recall, wasn't even just black people, but
it was like predominantly black people.
Okay.
Yeah.
When was that though?
I think it was in you're talking Tuskegee, right?
Was that Tuskegee?
Oh no, not sterilization.
Sterilization, I think,
Oh, that
was
was a different thing. Yeah.
70s, maybe. So I
think
mean,
so.
like we're talking like 40, almost 50 years or so. You know, I'm not sure of the timeline exactly, but like decades, right?
Yeah.
Of being relatively honest in that perspective, right? Like, hey, we're not actively trying to like pull a eugenics thing on you, you know, like
We're not actively trying to pull a eugenics thing on you, but we kind of are. I yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
But the thing is, like, unless you have the knowledge and education to understand the world around you and how it works and how all the pieces fit together, it's difficult to separate one thing from another. And especially when there's a very strong cultural element telling you something.
Yeah.
You know, you have your people, and they're telling you history and giving you words of wisdom and things like that. You can't overcome that by simply being an expert in your field. Because the experts are the ones that wronged you in the past, or your people in the past, your families. Like,
I mean, not necessarily directly.
well, I guess it depends on the situation.
I mean, like, the act of being an expert wasn't the driving force that led them to, you know, be...
Oh, no, for sure not.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, unless you're given that knowledge and capability to understand, being able to separate those is difficult.
Yeah.
Like, it's a whole thing. Like, never trust a cop. Because cops keep killing us and arresting us and stuff. Like,
I mean, that is a case of... that's a very good example of something that is still happening almost every day. You know? Like that's a problem that has not even remotely gone away. It's just been getting worse.
well, and the thing is, like, you could be a black person or a Mexican person or somebody, an other, if there is such a thing in the U.S., and suffer the consequences of that. You know, even though, like, statistically, we know that it's so rare. It's very uncommon. Like, most cops are not racist. Most cops are not evil or inclined to beat people up. But it does happen. There are some shady things that happen, and people take it to heart. They remember that, and they pass it on to their kids. And parental advice is far more powerful than seeing something on the news or, I don't know, some authoritative figure telling you something. You know, if your mom is like, hey, let's have a sit down, I'm going to tell you about cops.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, whoa, you're going to listen up. So, that is tough to overcome.
You know, something you just said, this is a quick digression. Maybe it should be a minute microscopy or 5 minute microscopy. But what's the deal with when you're filling out a form? You've got all these different nationalities and then white. And when you select white, you have Hispanic or non-Hispanic. Like,
That's a good point.
what,
Like,
why
why don't they make a differentiation between, like, Slavic people or Scandinavian people or Europeans or even, like, subdivided down
Indo-European
beyond
or-
that?
yeah,
Because they're
Eurasian.
all very different. And if you're white in the U.S.,
you're a
I'll
mix
tell
of
you
a
what.
whole bunch of shit.
yeah, and I'll tell you what, like, if I went to Georgia, I'd have a tough time having a conversation with somebody in Georgia who was my skin color or whatever, you know, like, I culturally, like, we are so different. I don't even know you.
There's a hardly anybody in our generations that is like any less than 3 nationalities, I'd say. Like there's and probably way more. I mean, I'm like 6, you know. I mean, it just seems silly to me. Like,
yeah, I agree. Like, and the idea that there's any kind of merit to
or Native American or black, you know. There's so many. There's different tribes of Native Americans. There's different origins of black people. There, you know, like.
And yeah, not all black people even came from Africa too.
Yeah, Asian, like there's a marked physical difference between somebody in India and somebody in Korea, right?
Yeah.
You know, like these buckets, they're stupid. Anyway.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Anyway,
wow.
To get back to the COVID thing, there's one other Pandora's box I want to open.
Open away. I'm game.
We've still got some beer.
Yeah, and we got like 15 minutes left. If we want to keep this brief.
Brief.
We don't do brief around here.
If I open this box, this Pandora's box, I might have to go grab another pint. But
it's okay.
The federal government has said they won't make these mandatory vaccines, but it is open to state and local governments to do so. So what do you think about that?
Well, first off,
and employers.
Well, okay, employers are fine, but to the state, I say go fuck yourself. Like, I think you should, as somebody that cares about other people around you and kind of cares about like the situations, but I have a huge problem with compulsory anything. But if it
aligns with what you think you should do, are you automatically gonna like flip it off and be like, you know what, fuck you? Because to me that feels like, I don't know, like something a child would do. Like I'm not going to do it because you told me to do it.
Nope. Consistency, you know, that's kind of the core of it. Like, the initiation of force can never be justified. That's where I'm coming from. You know, if this is something important, you should have the ability to make a compelling argument. And if you compel me enough, I will do it. And if some other people don't, well, so be it. That's the way it works.
We've just spent 3/4 of an hour trying to wrap our heads around a good way to make it compelling, and it's way harder than you would think. You know, like, so,
maybe that's the way you depopulate the earth. You know, like.
I mean, I think that's going to happen. Like,
yeah.
We're on the brink of at least a partial collapse of the way we know things to be.
Well, here's the thing. Economists, particularly
money.
are subject. Well, economists are subject to this fallacy that like everything always goes up, right? Like housing and stuff, like it always goes up. No, it's cyclical. It goes up, it goes down. It goes up, it goes down. It has through time immemorial. Like there is no status quo. And things change, like conditions change and stuff like that. It's okay.
Yeah.
In this case, like, I think that we'll overcome it. I mean, fortunately, this particular situation is not that deadly. But the way I see it is, it's a lesson. Like when toilet paper sold out, I was like, yeah, I hadn't accounted for that. And I'm a prepper, right? I hadn't accounted for toilet paper selling out. So when it comes back, I should probably buy some more.
I just want to say, years ago, I made a comment about your toilet paper stock. I was like, really? You only have a 4-pack of dollar store toilet paper? Like,
I've got more in there.
But anyway, like I've thought in recent years, humanity is technologically kind of used this unnatural way of surpassing natural selection, right? Like we've used our brains to develop ways to protect ourselves from the forces of nature. But not entirely, right?
Yeah.
And I think this might be a situation where we face, like, not extinction necessarily, but endangerment. And no, it's not super dangerous, like, percentage-wise, right? But
Statistically, yeah.
That's a statistic, right? But it all comes down to when you parse it out into groups, right? Let's say all this vaccine skepticism and all these conspiracy theories, let's say that drags COVID out decades. And as we age, and as we gain comorbidities, and as our telomeres shorten, and we age and wither and become more susceptible to it, that 2-3% chance of dying if you catch it creeps way up.
Yeah.
As you age, and if it becomes a prevalent problem that we don't address, that we don't tackle by meeting that herd immunity, it could really shape the way we evolve. There could be people that develop a natural immunity or develop a such an immune system that they just get mild symptoms and it's nothing more than a cold or a flu to them, but to other people it can decimate them and affect them for the rest of their lives and shorten their lifespan and affect their ability to actually reach an age where they procreate and reduce the population. I mean I'm almost verging on a slippery slope, but it's like something like this could actually happen.
Well, and it could. And as a prepper, I pay attention to what's going on and take to heart what I've witnessed and lessons that have been learned. This, to me, seems like less of a deal than is being talked about, but it's a lesson. Like, okay, we dodged a bullet there. It could have been really bad. This isn't as bad as we thought at first, but we should, as people who want to preserve our lives and the lives of our families, we should be thinking about this. What could we do in the future to prevent this? What could we do? How can we institute systems to tackle the future zombie apocalypse, whatever it is?
Yeah.
Because I honestly, I'm not even that worried about it, but it's a lesson.
I think it could shift the balance of power.
Yeah.
I mean, there are countries that are handling this way better.
It's a cross-cultural comparison, and we all know how that.
Well, I don't see how that really makes a difference. I mean, we're talking about biology, not culture.
Mm-hmm. Well, no,
that's indiscriminate.
There's behaviors and all kinds of factors, but no, point taken. The thing, what I'm getting at is, if this was the big one, right? The zombie apocalypse, we weren't ready.
Oh, yeah.
We were totally not ready. The whole planet was not ready for this stuff. And this is the point where we should be like, hey, what did we do wrong?
Yeah.
How could we deal with this in the future? Let's presume, it's not like COVID-19 or something like that. Let's assume it's some kind of, I don't know, really virulent, brain-eating virus, right? Like, what if that happened?
Yeah.
What if, like, it had, instead of, like, a 0.03% mortality rate, it was, like, 70%. Imagine that. Like, we have to be ready for that. And to me, I think...
Mortality rate is way higher than that, by the way.
The IFR, like, we could go into that. But
you have to look at people who actually get it rather than everybody, including people who have it.
Well, and that's tough because we don't know who has it. Only, like, cases, but math. I can't math, especially with beer. More beer.
Statistics are hard.
Mm-hmm.
They're deceptively easy, but they're hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But regardless, like, whatever number you ascribe it, like, it could have been a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I see this as a lesson. Like, how could we improve our plan?
Yeah.
We should have a plan. Why do we not have a plan? Why is everybody like, oh, I've got my dick in my hand, I'm jerking off. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, every government on the fucking planet was doing that. Why? How are you... Why did you not have a plan for that? Like, we have a plan for, like, mutually assured destruction, nuclear exchange and stuff. Like, how we're going to deal with that, and asteroids and fucking alien invasions. We didn't think of this? Are you kidding me? Like, that's a huge... Yeah, aliens, yeah. That's a huge problem. And I see it as a lesson. Like,
yeah,
people should be thinking about that.
What if this virus came from aliens? What if that's why that whole Space Force thing was implemented?
Ooh. Dang. Oh, man. You got my conspiracy theory feckles up now.
Hackles. It's hackles.
Feckles, schmeckles, whatever. Yeah. The point is, like, I see this as a learning experience. Like, yeah, we didn't know. And everybody's, like, pointing fingers and blaming people. Like, fuck you. You don't know any better than anybody else. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The point is what we do in the future. Like,
Yeah.
how engineering. You take the lessons learned from your past mistakes and you find ways to improve them for the future.
I mean, there's a lot I've learned from this situation. Like you said, like, hey, what if there is some virus that pops up and we don't know it until it's too late? This social distancing thing, this mask if you're sick thing, that's a good idea. I'm gonna do that for the rest of my life.
I actually, like, okay, so the mask thing, that is good.
Yeah.
They have been doing this in Asian countries for a long time.
That's cultural. That's a cultural thing that has been really effective. China basically wiped out this virus almost immediately because they have that built into their culture.
Well, and they welded shut the doors of apartments. But we'll not go down that road. But no, you bring up a good point. Like, people in those countries don't see some kind of social stigma about, like, covering your face if you're sick.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, that's a sign that you're sick and I should avoid you.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's a good thing.
And so even before COVID, I kept hand sanitizer in my car.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I went shopping, I would try not to touch my face or my phone, and I would sanitize my hands after I got back, because I've always been mindful of the fact that there's a lot of people in there, just like when I went to the gym or whatever,
Yeah.
So, like, I'm seeing now in action how that has been effective. So there's already things that I was, like, mindful of, but there's things I wasn't mindful of. And it's just a learning experience, like, we can grow from this.
Oh, sure. And something I enjoy about this, like something I like, is the fact that people are staying home, working from home and stuff. Because something that, there's a thing that drives me up the wall is people coming to work and they're like, whoa, I got a fever. I think I might have the flu.
Yeah.
Like, why did you fucking come to work? Stay home. You've got sick days.
Yeah.
You have like 8,000 hours of sick days. Like, why do you not just stay home? Why are you coming to work? And
well, some people don't have sick days, and that's why we need sick days.
Well,
like, that's why that really needs to be there for everybody.
Even if you don't have a paid sick day, you should have at least, like, if you get jury duty or something, like, no one can fire you for going to jury duty, right? Like, it should be an excused thing. But Kel, just for like a couple days, and even if you don't have it, come to work, cover your face, wash your hands. Like, it isn't that hard. Even if it's the flu or the cold or something, I mean, because that's kind of what we deal with mostly.
Yeah.
Except for those like anti-vaxxers that get measles and stuff like that. That's a new thing. Yeah.
A new old thing.
Yeah. I thought, like, it would be really cool to do.
This is why the aliens don't talk to us.
They will. They'll talk to some of us. The smart ones. I thought it'd be cool to do a video where we went and got the vaccine together. I don't know if we can actually record.
I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to, but we're not necessarily in the top tier of people that are going to have availability. So,
no. As somebody who's very, very unlikely to die from this virus, I'm going to be the last guy. Like, I will literally be the last person to get a vaccine. And they'll be like, well, we got one more.
I mean, with my new job, I might be kind of up there, but I don't know.
Well, you're a like a double cancer survivor, so you might
yeah, I still don't know where I land with that, because, like, so my immune system was reset, but that was 12 years ago. So I'm technically like a 12-year-old as far as immune systems go.
Yeah.
And they're relatively robust for this particular virus. So I don't know that I technically fall into like a comorbidity range. Like, I've got mild asthma. Like, I'm not actually that concerned about catching it and dying from it. I'm more concerned about catching it, not knowing it, and carrying it to my parents other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's what people really need to be thinking about. It's not all about you.
Yeah.
It's about other people.
And that's the whole thing. Like, people covering your face. Like, you're not covering your... Jesus Christ, you're not covering your face to protect yourself.
Right.
It's to stop things from coming from you to someone else.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
I mean, it's a little of both. It's more of protecting
very
others
little
from you.
Protecting you, yeah.
But, I mean, there is some of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it is blocking your most points of egress into your mouth, right? But not all.
Yeah, well, I would challenge anybody to fart and then, like, filter it out with your mask. Like, you're going to realize that shit doesn't do anything to stop that.
If an astronaut farts on the moon and there's no kind of atmosphere, is he all alone, more or less?
Oh, man. More beer for that one. Oh, that's good. Yeah, oh, jeez.
By the way, China just planted a flag on the moon.
Yeah, there was a probe sent recently. It wasn't a...
Anal probe?
No, it was a space probe. It wasn't a guy from China, like, flag on the moon. It was a probe.
Yeah.
Mechanical stuff. But good! Like,
But do you have a flag?
we need to be doing that more often. And Venus, by the way, Venus is the place.
Well, according to the Israeli guy that just said that aliens are real, there's a contract between us and the aliens. They have an underground base on Mars.
I find it cool that there would be aliens who would respect contracts.
I know, right?
Like, that's kind of neat.
We too have contracts on our world.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, we gotta talk about that one.
That's a whole episode.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole different rabbit hole to go down.
Unless the aliens brought COVID.
And they might have.
They might have.
We barely touched on the 5G thing, though. And I want to say, okay.
I don't know if there's much to say about it. It's so...
Well, people think... I mean...
Crypto-fascist.
Crypto-fascist. You keep saying that. So people keep, like, angling that 5G is the thing. It's like, do you even know what 5G is? Like, you know, you can name a name and ascribe some kind of effect. But tell me how it works. Like, if you can't explain how 5G communication works, and by the way, it's just an arbitrary name. Like,
yeah.
5G isn't a thing.
Well,
it's just a definition of a set of frequencies used for communication. And people are like, well, 5G caused COVID. And then, like you said, they moved the goalposts, as one does.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's something different. The thing is, like, it's radio waves. It's the electromagnetic spectrum. It's nothing special. You know, we're surrounded by it all day. You listen to the radio. It's electromagnetic spectrum. It's like nothing remarkable.
Yeah.
You use microwaves. This is called. It's not microwaves. It's like millimeter waves, I think. Close though. 5G is kind of like two different sets of things. Like, something's going down into the microwave range, like close to infrared.
It would be like in the early mid-90s being like, well, my Packard Bell 512 is now like a Pentium.
Yeah.
And that's going to cause cancer and control my brain. You know, like...
Well, and the thing is, like, okay, if you're fearful of something, you should aim to understand how it works. And then you can come to the conclusion of whether you should be fearful or not. 5G, totally not. Even if it's in the microwave, which is not.
Did they have this kind of hype for 4G?
No, and it's coincidence. So, some stuff happened this year that didn't happen when 4G was rolled out. But, you know, everybody's like, well, I don't know, like, this happened at the same time that did. So, that must have caused that.
Correlation is not causation!
Yeah, exactly. It's bullshit. Like, it's just radio waves. And it's not ionizing. Not ionizing. By the way, you should look up ionizing radiation and understand what that is and why UV is bad and infrared or beyond infrared is not.
Alpha waves, beta waves, gamma waves, delta waves. So,
well, you know, talking about like
half of them
emissions,
are basically
like alpha, beta. Like, are you talking about electrons or helium ions or gamma rays? Like, I mean,
some of it's harmful, some of it's not.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if you understood it, you'd be able to recognize where something is harmful or not.
Yeah.
And people say radiation, like, radiation is a bad thing. Well, tell me what's radiation. Like, if you think it's a bad thing, explain to me how it works and why it's bad. If you can't, you're a fucking idiot. You're just like me, by the way. But it...
Maybe a better word is ignorant.
Yeah, I just defer to that phrase. Yeah, except, well, you're ignorant, you know. And that's not a slight. Like, there's opportunities to learn.
Right, yeah.
Like, there's actually a lot to know.
Everybody's ignorant. Everybody's ignorant.
Get Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
Like, we're all ignorant, and the more you know, the more ignorant you realize you are. If you think you know everything, you're probably on that lower tier.
I just found out that Bitcoin is colloquially referred to as Dunning-Krugerites. Because everybody thinks they know what it's going to do and how it's going to act and what it's worth and all this stuff.
Oh, wow. Yes, this went down like a completely different trajectory, but I think it's good. I think it's all kind of interconnected. And I think the idea of understanding the thing that you fear, like the more, I would say, here's my advice, I guess. The more fearful you are of something, the more you should strive to understand it.
Yeah. And you should recognize when somebody else understands something really complex that you maybe don't have the time and resources to commit yourself to understanding.
Yeah.
You know, like honestly, like I'm able to recognize the fact that it's hard to grasp why a vaccine could be, you know, pretty benign.
Yeah.
But I also understand why, you know, a layperson would see it as, you know, a scary thing. Because
Sure.
you know, they're prone to go with the masses, right? Like a lemming off of a cliff. They're like, well, everyone else is scared of this. I'm going to go be scared of this too.
Well, okay. Actually, that is a really good point. And I think I have to open another beer for this one.
I might have to go get another beer too.
Go ahead.
I'll hear you.
We won't jump cut. It'll be totally live. So, like, I'm thinking about back in like the 50s, right? Like, thinking about vaccines. Like, you're talking about vaccines and acceptance and stuff like that. In the 50s, almost everybody universally accepted vaccines as amazing. It was some fantastical technology, just like the future. And at some point, it changed. Okay, yeah, there was the whole, like, radium thing and radiation, you know, drinking radium water and everything.
What did that have to do with vaccines, though?
Well, technology. Like the idea that we learn things, and the things we've learned are remarkable. Which a lot of them are.
I wonder if it has to do with the flu, honestly. Because, so, like, even back when we had the thing that's most akin to COVID-19, right? The Spanish flu, 1917, 1918. We had vaccines back then, just not a vaccine for that. It's not a vaccine for the flu in general. But, you know, like by 1950, like you said, you know, we found a way to vaccinate against polio. You know, like, we had all these great advents in science. There was, you know, like, penicillin and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, we were like, hey, we're finally getting a grasp on how to protect ourselves from the minutia of just biology and evolution, right?
Yeah.
We were really making strides as like rising above natural selection, right around the 1950s, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it became like this yearly thing, like just looking at the skepticism now with people being like, hey, this came out really quick, the fact that the flu virus would mutate so rapidly that they needed a different vaccine every year, going back to whenever that started, that was probably a huge concern. Like, hey, this came out in only a year, at least in their perception, right?
Yeah.
Even though it was really longer. That may have actually been the, spark that started the skepticism for vaccines on the whole.
It could be. I mean, granted, a lot of people alive today probably weren't alive back then. So why do they think the things they do now? But the thing is, like, at that time, it was the space age. We're better living through technology and science and chemistry. And that was a thing. Like, people really took it to heart. They really cared. Why is it not the same today? That is probably the pivotal question. Like, how do we go from a society, I say we as the U.S., go from a society who appreciated the products of science and technological innovation to being very skeptical of them?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know the answer. I think it probably has something to do with like some of the bullshittery that happened, where some people were taken advantage of, and you've got all these conspiratorial things rising up from that, which probably justified.
Yeah, some of that, but I think a lot of it has to do with appeal to emotion or sowing the seeds of doubt. Like.
But why? Why? Here's the thing. At the time, the nuclear age, like, it was all awesome. Like, everything is awesome. Not to go down the Lego movie route. Oh, jeez. But it was all really cool. Like, we're going to have flying cars. Everybody's going to have, like, a nuclear power plant in their house. And, it'll be great. Like, a vibrant, beautiful future. And then all of a sudden it took a dystopian turn. That's what I want to address. Like, where did that point happen? And I know what it is, but I just would like to ask, where did it happen?
I don't know. I'm trying to think back to childhood, right? Like, I don't remember any of these general conversations happening. Like, and I mean, there were like, I grew up you and I both grew up in the era where there wasn't a vaccine for chickenpox. And they used to have chickenpox parties, right?
I fucking got chickenpox from one of those parties.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Got scrubbing my body, sloughing off with the... Yeah.
And there are people who are advocating, like, just go out and get COVID-19 and get it over with. As if that's, like, the be-all, end-all. Like, chickenpox... Once you get that, you never get it again, right? Yeah. You can get shingles.
True, and I think, can't you get shingles only if you've had chickenpox?
I'm not 100% sure on that. You might be able to get it if you haven't had chickenpox, but the point being, now that there's a vaccine, like, it seems barbaric that we would put our kids through that, right?
Well,
now chickenpox is a little different. Like, if you get it as an adult, it is way more hardcore, and you could actually die from it.
Mm-hmm.
You basically have zero chance of dying from it as a child.
And we have to look at things through the lens of the time. Like, what did we know back then?
And that highlights the fact that you have to look at viruses differently. They don't all act the same.
None of them do,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point here.
Yeah.
It's like, everyone's like, why didn't we act like this with SARS-1? Why is SARS-2 so much different? Well, it's different.
Yeah.
That's why it's different.
But,
you know?
because it's a virus? Like, I'm a dumbass, and I know this shit. Like, why do you not know this? Oh, man.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Like, if you can recognize two things are different, but not understand why they act differently, there's a cognitive issue there.
Well, you should probably...
Which is a nice way of saying you're an idiot, but...
You should probably go back and do some research. Like, if you... Hey, know your enemy. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Kind of the first rule of war. Know your enemy. Like, if you don't understand something, if you don't know how it works, and you're kind of in the dark about it, like, you should probably elect to understand it. Because actually, at the end of the day, you might be one of those people that figures out a solution. And that'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, wow. I think, wow, we've been, we're almost coming up on like an hour and a half now.
Oh, yeah. I knew this one would go long, though, because there's so many angles that we've, deep dived into, right?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't really touch on 5G, of course, but, there was the whole, like, the black community, skepticism, and, the mandatory vaccines, and whether or not vaccines work, and whether or not
we didn't talk about the mandatory thing, but...
well, a little bit, but...
Yeah.
And actually, yeah, like, while we're mentioning it, I know that you are kind of opposed to that just fundamentally as, like, a personal autonomy thing.
Yeah.
But... What do you think about, like, so personal autonomy also includes the freedom to move about, right?
Yeah.
Like, to feel safe to do as you please, right?
Well, and it also includes the non-aggression principle. Like, initiation of force can never be justified.
Right.
So, if you are virulent and you willingly go amongst your peers and infect them with some kind of crazy virus, that's on you.
And the catch here is you don't know if you're virulent or not at any given moment. I could right now be spreading COVID to you because we're not 6 feet apart anymore. Or vice versa, because you're vaping and it's like in all the particles of the vape. And it's getting into my lungs and giving me vape lung and COVID.
Vape lung. Well, and yeah, exactly.
Like there's autonomy and then there's social contract, and they have to work in harmony. Like, rights come with responsibilities.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, there's a point where your rights end where mine begin, kind of, like, and that's a gray area. Like, it's something that, like, my community struggles with a lot, like, solving these issues, and this one remains unsolved.
I see it as a humanity issue.
Yeah.
Right? It's not an autonomy thing so much as it's like, it's not where mine ends and yours begins. It's more like that gray area just falls under humanity. It's
Well, and
like,
that's kind of like the way to analyze it in your own
Yeah.
self.
And
Right?
I mean,
like if you want to try to figure it out.
so what do you think of this analogy, right? Like, so what do you call it when you're driving along and you look down at your phone for just a second, maybe just as long as you would look at your speedometer, right? You just look away for that second, and a little kid jumps out in front of you, and you hit them, and you get charged with manslaughter, and it's because you happened to be looking away at that 1 second, which could have been at the speedometer, but it happened to be at a cell phone, and they call it manslaughter. How is that different than not wearing a mask and not knowing that you have COVID, but giving it to someone and that someone dies from that?
Well, and yeah, like I am not a fan of compulsory anything, but I think it's important for people to realize if you want to be free, there are some things you have to do.
You should want other people to be free.
Well,
too.
exactly,
Yeah.
and that's the conflict, right? Like it's not just you.
Yeah.
Like when you're talking viruses, it's not like, oh, I just want to have my guns or my, marijuana or whatever. Like, it's not that. It isn't just you. This is something,
Yeah.
a virus that you could infect somebody else with. And so precautions are not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, extreme precautions are not a bad thing. This virus, not that extreme, fortunately. Good lesson. That's the point. Moving forward in the future, like, we should be wary of that and observant of that, and especially because I don't want a bunch of people to be stupid and then force the state to come in and drop the heavy fucking Thor hammer on people.
Yeah.
Because they're all being dumb. Like,
that's the rub, right? Like, you shouldn't have to tell people how to be compassionate.
mm-hmm.
But there comes a point where somebody's going to have to come in and be like, look, somebody has to put a stop to this.
Yeah.
Right? And that's called authority, right? And there, like, I hate authority too. But maybe a little less than you, because I understand there's a time and place for it.
Well, but who dictates that? Okay, that's a whole nother.
No, I mean,
Let's
like,
stay away from
whoever steps up to take the moral authority has that right. You know,
Stalin? Oh, sorry. But you know,
why are you stalling?
I don't know. I'm a fan of Russia. What can I say? I like AKs and.
I mean, the point I'm trying to make is, like, it's just like a group project, right? Nobody gets assigned leadership. The person who basically says, okay, nobody else is doing this, I guess I'm going to take that role. Like, nobody picks leadership necessarily to begin with. It just kind of falls to the person who gravitates toward that. You know,
unless you vote.
I'm saying that first, right?
Okay,
like,
yeah.
You know, like we didn't vote for George Washington. You know?
Yeah, well, we kind of did. He didn't even want the role.
Right, he was appointed.
He was like, fuck no.
No, he was appointed. There was no election. You know, like that. That's my point. It's like it. You know, in the beginning of any given situation, right? Like, somebody has to make a decision if there's any dichotomy, or more than dichotomy, if there's a word for that. If there's anybody at odds with how things should proceed, somebody will rise above and say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. Well, decisions have to be made, otherwise
but then
there's consequences.
Well, there are, but then how do we know the person rising above making the decisions is making the right ones?
Well, you
and
don't.
Not the right. Well,
but
why do we defer to them?
But it's a numbers game, right?
Yeah.
Like if your choices are, well, if we do nothing, we're 100% fucked, or if we put our faith in this guy who's taking leadership, we have like a 25% chance of living. Which one are you going to take?
It's starting to sound a little bit like religion, but I feel like this could totally go on. Like it's actually like a really good conversation. Like we have touched on some really, really amazing things. Oh man.
Yeah.
But I have to pee.
I do too.
And it's we're like an hour and a half in now. I think that's about all the time we have for today. That's
but good... it's so good.
It's totally good. Like, this is actually like a really good conversation. And you notice we disagree, but we're not yelling at each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we disagree on some things. Oh, man. Oh, this is just like really, really good. Oh. And it twisted and turned like through all kinds of different angles and stuff. Like, and I feel like we're on the cusp of something epic. Yeah. Like there's something we were about to address that
something as hot button as a COVID-19 vaccine opens so many doors to so many issues about autonomy, skepticism, what you should believe, what you should be researching,
and how.
Yeah.
Like how you should research. Like, sure, be skeptical, always. But research cautiously. Like, don't go. Well, we've gone down that path with the anti-vaxxer guy.
Yeah,
like,
vet your sources.
Yeah. You try to be unbiased.
Just because you read something doesn't mean it's credible.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I'm all about that, and I'm a lover of conspiracies. Like, I love that shit. But I know where to draw the line. Oh man, this is actually really good. Wow.
So there's a lot we touched on. If there's anything you want us to go into further detail on, or anything you want to add to, throw it in the comments and let us know.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe we'll create a post on ksmvidcast.com and you can throw in your thoughts there, and maybe it'll turn into a whole other episode on a whole other tangent.
It probably will.
Yeah.
That's very likely.
Because this is a huge issue. This is a global.
Yeah.
It's something that's affected us globally. Mm-hmm. However you feel about it, one way or the other, it's changed humanity.
Yeah, and if you're one of those people that's like fearful and thinks like, I gotta do whatever the authorities tell me, or you're one of those anti-statist Great Reset people or something like that, I think this conversation is very valuable.
Yeah.
And I think it goes further than whatever is currently going on. This current situation, like the coof, right? Like, it goes beyond that. There's a lot more going on, a lot more conversations that can be had.
Change always makes people wary.
Well, it does.
But you can get good stuff from it. Like, the internet made people wary. Like, and there's bad stuff that can happen via the internet. But there's so much good.
Well, it's true. Or cryptocurrency or blockchain encryption and stuff like
Dunning-Kruger rights.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, what happened to the buggy whip manufacturers?
The what?
You know, exactly.
Spacely sprockets?
Yeah. Like, everything changes, and it's okay. Okay, that's a good point to end on, I think.
There's an old stove on my beer.
Because
it's called Old Stove Brewing.
Nice. There's an old Android saying,
I've had enough beer. 110001100110.
Translate that in the comments. I think that's a good point to end on.
Don't stand around jabbering when you're in mortal danger.
Oh, I love Red Dwarf. Oh. Okay, well, have a good night, everybody.